Today, in the media conference with Lal Goel, which is brought to you by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, News Gaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, Bharat Post News, Karu News, Organ Donation India Foundation, and Gyan. Our endeavor is to enlighten you with the current topic. And today's topic is not only current, but very, very important. And the topic is quality education. Quality education. Sustainable Development Goal 4, that is SDG 4 or Global Goal 4, is about quality education and is among the 17 Sustainable Development Goals established by the United Nations in September 2015. The full title of SDG 4 is Ensure Inclusive and Equitable Quality Education and Promote Lifelong Learning Opportunities for All. SDG 4 has 10 targets which are measured by 11 indicators. The 7 outcome-oriented targets are free primary and secondary education, equal access to quality pre-primary education, affordable technical, vocational and higher education, increased number of people with relevant skills for financial success, elimination of all discrimination in education, universal literacy and numeracy, and education for sustainable development and global citizenship. The 3 means of achieving targets are build and upgrade inclusive and safe schools, expand higher education scholarships for developing countries, and increase the supply of qualified teachers in developing countries. SDG 4 aims to provide children and young people with quality and easily accessible education plus other learning opportunities. One of its targets is to achieve universal literacy and numeracy, a major component in acquiring knowledge and valuable skills in the learning environment. Hence, the urgent need to build more educational facilities and also upgrade the present ones to provide safe, inclusive, and effective learning environment for all. Prevalence of extreme poverty, insurgency, communal conflicts, and other factors has significantly reduced the progress in many developing countries. Children from poor households have a higher possibility of dropping out of schools than their counterparts from rich backgrounds. Disparities between rural and urban areas still remain high. Poor quality education is leading to poor learning outcomes in India, ultimately pushing children out of the education system and leaving them vulnerable to child labor, abuse, and violence. Many classrooms continue to be characterized by teacher-centered rote learning, corporal punishment, and discrimination. Learning assessments show that many of those children who are in school are not learning the basics of literacy and numeracy or the additional knowledge and skills necessary for their all-round development as specified under the Right to Education Act. Much remains to be done to ensure a child-friendly learning environment where all children benefit from gender-sensitive and inclusive classrooms, as well as the availability of improved water, sanitation, and hygiene and midday meal practices. Every girl and boy in India has the fundamental right to quality education, and education one that helps them to acquire basic literacy and numeracy, enjoy learning without fear, and feel valued and included irrespective of where they come from. According to the 6th edition of Sustainable Development Report 2021, that is SDR 2021, released by Sustainable Development Solutions Network, SDSN, India with a score of 60.1 has been placed at 120th rank out of 165 countries. To discuss this very, very important point, because this quality education is neither, it's not only for me or for our panelists, but it is for every citizen of the country, because every citizens, their children are studying in school, colleges, and higher education institutions. So to discuss this very, very important point, we have a very elite, knowledgeable, those who have vast experience as an educator, or in the corporate field, and those who have seen this very closely, the improvement or the decline of quality education in India. I would like to invite my first panelist guest, and he is Professor Dr. K. Sankaran. Professor Dr. K. Sankaran is the Director of Justice K.S. Hegde Institute of Management, NITTE. He is BTech Honors from IIT Kharagpur, PGDM from IIM Bangalore. He has done PhD from Kent State University, USA. He has several years of academic experience in India, US, UK, Middle East, and East Asia. He started his career with Tata's. He has several years of experience in management, consulting, and project management. Dr. Sankaran has widely published his articles in highly rated international journals such as Strategic Management Journal and Journal of Marketing Management, and many others. Currently, he is researching in the area of higher education governance and andragogy. Welcome, Professor Dr. K. Sankaran on our show. Professor Dr. K. Sankaran, now today, quality education, which has been taken very seriously by the UNO, United Nations, and their fourth agenda is on the sustainable development is the quality education. Now, you have worked not only in India, but abroad, and you have seen very closely the education systems everywhere in the world. We would like to know your views on quality education. Professor Dr. K. Sankaran, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. It's always a pleasure to be with you on the panels. I'm indeed happy for getting this opportunity to discuss such an important issue. Now, it's such a complex issue. I mean, you read out all the problems and, all the aspirations coming as they do from United Nations and so on. These are extremely complex issues, of course. And I really don't know what real solutions are. But as an academic, as a person who has dealt with students from different continents, actually, I have also taught in Hong Kong and Far East as well as in the US. When I was studying at the undergraduate level, I taught the graduate level. I taught in the UK universities as well as India. I think our students are extremely, extremely capable. Let's start with that. And I think that capability is not restricted to cities. It's there also in the smaller areas. Now, I'm talking about higher education, particularly at the master's level. But I know that these people have come from this, school and undergraduate levels. And obviously, some of these capabilities are definitely developed early in their education. Now, the problem with us is that we are impatient as a country. So we took education to mean something like a mass production. And what really happened in our country, maybe that was good for the first 70 years, but now there needs to be a change. We gave a lot of importance, according to what I think, in higher education when it came to professional education. Now, what this has generated is a few things, and I'm going to be critical about what's happening, not because we have not achieved, but I'm saying the potential is so much more, and it's time we actually asked whether we did all these things right. First is the regulatory overburden that we face. As head of Justice K.S. Hegde Institute of Management, one day I was just sitting and counting the number of organizations that are sitting on me. There are 8 of them at different levels. And myself and my colleagues spend enormous amount of time in, just filling forms. It's amazing how much time is lost. Now, if you were to go by, Sri Aurobindo's idea of Chadurvyuha, of tendencies of people, we are knowledge keepers at the highest level. And it's extremely important that we do self-order. And self-order means having a sense of responsibility and also have a sense of accountability and also have the wherewithal to handle knowledge for what it is. So I don't think in our country we have had enough discussion on, the philosophy of knowledge, philosophy of science. We are too impatient. So we give too much importance to those professions which have SOPs in a way. I would call, with due respect, I'm saying, whether it's law or whether it's medicine or whether it is accounting, to some extent engineering and management. And engineering and management, a chartered engineer is a professional thing. management is really not a profession unless, he's part of a quality systems and so on. So we give so much importance to these standard operating procedures that we think we can achieve nirvana by following standard operating procedure. The whole idea of the academy is to critique, and I've seen this happening in US and UK universities where I have worked and studied. So this regulatory overburden is like trying to discipline people to become knowledge people. That never happens. An average person in India spends so much more time on administration, including filling up forms or different accreditation agencies. We don't understand is what is process versus content also. That's a very big issue. I mean, these things have to be written up about and so on. So regulatory thing. And the second thing about professional, we think professional education can be applied to humanities. I cannot improve myself as a thinker if I go for professions. Professions are not the answer to it. Professions are of course required, but I need to question professions. So for instance, in accounting, I know this. I had professors from accounting department helping me in my PhD. They question a lot of practice at the university level. Here, nothing of that sort happens because professions are considered everything. Be practical on day one. That exactly goes against the Indic thinking that mind and supermind is more important than practice. Yeah, practice comes from an informed mind. It doesn't come by instructions. So that's number two. So this whole top-down, regulatory system is deeply problematic. We are asking people at the age of 18 to choose their career. As I understand now, NEP is saying, for instance, that at the age of 18, a person, a boy or a girl who is disciplined in school is getting the freedoms to be themselves. So 4 years have to be, a person should be trying out music and art and so on and so forth. And, choosing medicine at the age of 21 or 22, if or she finds that he or she is actually appropriate for this. So these 4 years, actually 4 years, that's what NEP is also saying, is to figure out who I am. So though our culture tells us to, view things inwards, we are asking people to say, be useful, be altruistic. Nobody becomes altruistic by being told to be altruistic by people who are not actually altruistic. That's what's happening. So in some ways, we are actually vulgarizing the profession of education in a way, if I use these strong words, if I may, So usefulness of society comes from having something that is of usefulness to oneself, which can actually issue forth as an illumined person. That doesn't happen when we put this kind of restrictions of exams and so on and so forth. Personally, I can talk of so many different stories. We don't have time, but I can tell you, I learned maximum from people who developed their own sense of how students should be tested. So I had one person in IIM Bangalore who gave 12 tests, and she was such a tough person. And we were going ahead, by leaps and bounds in accounting. But I also had another professor who said, I'm not going to have you test, but I'll have just one paper for you. So I got to read Santayana and Talcott Parsons and later Sri Aurobindo and Mahatma Gandhi. So what I'm saying is, freedom for the teacher at higher education is extremely, extremely important. It's a variety of perspectives that we are presenting, even to an MBA student for that matter. So he can get into accounting, or he can get into marketing, or he can get into NGO sector or corporate social responsibility. This factory orientation and thinking that, formulator and implementer, I'm trying to be as fast as possible. Formulator and implementator could be different, is deeply troubling, especially for the thought keepers. I wouldn't say the same thing about, a factory. In a factory, you have to follow standard operating procedures because there are implications if you make mistakes. But as academics, we are doing extremely important job, the most important job in society, but we are certainly not doing the most urgent thing. We have time on our side. We have, there has to be some discursiveness which needs to be done, but at the same time, focus on things where it's required. So I would say that our students are extremely smart, our people are extremely smart, but we don't trust each other, and we can't even an open book exam. We can't even have an exam where invigilator is not there. But I and my colleagues actually, in certain circumstances, have found we can have students who won't copy because we can bring them up to that level. But for that, we need to change this factory orientation, the orientation of the formulator and the implementer being different. This is a unique sector. especially higher education. At the undergraduate level, a certain amount of discipline is required for certainly, to get them up to a level. But undergraduate level education, I think, is deeply problematic. At the next level, at the postgraduate level, okay, fine, professional education is good. But to self-discover the 4 years between 17 or 18 years to 21, 22 years is so critical when the whole thing opens up for them. I think we need to do it gently. We need to do it with compassion. We need to have mentoring. We need to have a kind of attitude towards, empowerment. And it's eminently possible with small groups. And, we are doing that, and we are doing our best to do that. But the systems don't allow, because most of the time we are trying to satisfy somebody up there. So I'm really deeply troubled by even ranking. In the West, ranking is not done by government organizations. Ranking is done by popular magazines. They're fine. You look at 10 of them and see which is better. You can kind of talk about them. But there are nuanced ways of doing things, and the nuances are completely missing in this one-fits-all regulatory, kind of system. The credits are not given importance. We have a lot of problems. If I could just give two points, do I have time?
Yes.
Very good, very at the very down to earth level. We talk about, for instance, I'm just giving you the problems. We talk about grading system on letter grading. Now, letter grading is essentially saying that my least count cannot be 1 in 100. I can only have least count, let's say 1 in 5. If I have got A, B, C, D, F grading, or if I have a 10-point scale, I'm saying my least count is 1 in 10. And how many of us in the university system in India kind of accept if a young faculty comes and says my least count is 1 in 10, whatever the system allows me, but we tell them to do it in 1 in 100 and then convert it to letter grades. Now you ask, why do you have this then? You just given marks. There's no answer because somebody else is doing. So we've become such great copycats that we are not thinking through things. We want technology, but we are not willing to be patient with science. We want public policy, but we are not willing to be patient with social science thinking, humanities thinking. And if there has to be any cultural congruence, it has to start with fundamentals. So I've become a advocate for indigenous thinking. It doesn't matter whether it's Indic or whether it's Native American thinking. They are also going that way today. So that's one. Second thing is, how many of us know that this whole idea of accreditation is different from inspection? Accreditation requires some kind of some kind of mentoring. It happens after 10 years of mentoring by somebody who's very senior, who really wants this mentored institution to do well. And you have a visiting team at the end who is in tension, structural tension. Typically the way the West do these, institutional stuff, like the tension between legislature, executive, and judiciary. Same kind of tension exists between the visiting team and the mentor. Mentor is a very, very strong guy because he's a very well-known guy in the industry, in the teaching profession. Does it happen in our country? So we don't have accreditation, we have inspection. I have written about this. And fortunately, some people at the very, very high level in our country actually have listened to these things and, give credence to some of these points. So apolitical, intellectual abilities have to get grown, but that doesn't mean that we will become impractical. So particularly in India, a superior mind doesn't mean equivocality in decision making. Very interesting it is. For the West, there has to be a congruence between action and thought. In India, our thinking is that I want to reach God. It may not happen in my life. I can have plenty of time. And still I can be equivocal because I'm saying that I'm not cocky about my decision. So we have everything here, which is fundamentally right, but everything is done as slaves. So mentally, I think we are still slavish. We still can't match any of those, processes that are there in, at least in social sciences, I know, management, I know, despite such enormous amount of expenditure in some institutions. So this morning I was talking about, how the judges are gave a knuckle on IIT about them being wooden. I don't know what exactly that means fully, but I kind of sense that we need to have educators being a little, easy on students and actually sense their depth. And Indian students, they don't listen to you, but they have this jugaad thing. That's what I've seen after having taught in, Far East as well as the West. uh, they have the ability to solve problems in a politically very, very interesting way. And if we can channel them to ethical decision making and get them to do those things without strings attached and without power coming in the way of who is given importance and so on, they can solve world's problems very, very interestingly. And I think that's what we should try and do. So the older people with structures and power have to just come aside and get to create systems where youngsters can actually blossom and lead from behind, not from front. Americans' idea of leadership, of leading from the front, comes from infantry. You're taking the fire on day one. All the military stuff have brought about the management concepts. I'm talking about management now. But in India, it's about, it's about spiritual leadership. The leadership comes from behind. When youngsters, our juniors should say, I can do without this guy, and then you're successful. But when you're not there, you realize, my God, there's something that this guy is doing. It's unseen. So we need to redefine leadership processes. We need to do institutional things. I mean, so many things come to my mind. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, West organizations are all about, transactional between people, utility maximized. But in India, organizations they have their own identity. So it's like nationalism, for instance. So at different levels, we'll be so loyal that we are willing to give up things. That's why you find, during accidents, who comes to help, for instance, in our country? It is not the organized people, institutions that sent. It's happening to some extent now, which is good. We have, disaster management people, with due respect to all of the people. But if at all they are doing great, 70% of comes from the inner drive, that dharma. And that dharma cannot be defined by somebody else. Every person has to define, and we have to, her own dharma. And we have to help our students do that. That requires a very great, process of combining the head and the heart and the hands, the cognitive, the affective, and the kinesthetic. We can do that because we have it in us, but then we need to just leave it for people to do things themselves. And self-order and so on is so important. We need to have a discussion on this. So I'll stop with this. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Sankran. And Dr. Sankran started his talk today by saying the Indian students are very capable. They can solve anything. They can grasp anything. But so much regulatory. And he said, he used some very, very strong words. And he says that those educators, those high thinkers, they are working as a slave. They are working for filling the forms, administrative works, while they were supposed to be teaching or guiding or mentoring the students. They were just doing the work, which even without any disrespect, a clerical job they are doing, just filling the forms. So he says the more freedom to be given to the institutions if you require quality education. But if it will be that you have to do with the same stick with everyone, then it is very, very difficult to get the potential out of it. And let the teachers, the educators, to be left alone. They will decide how to teach, not the some regulations that you have to do this thing and these are the topics and these are the subjects you have to, which is not there. People have to think. Let them think. Let the students will think. But if you have fixed thing everywhere, then it is very, very difficult to obtain the quality education. And he has mentioned how even some accident occurs, how much reaction we have seen in India. People are not going to even help. That we have seen even on the roads also, because people were so much controlled. We have lost our inner voice. Otherwise, if we listen to our inner voice, we will rush and save the person. But we know that so much bureaucratic thing and so many things, with so many hurdles will come afterwards. So people keep themselves and let those who are responsible, they are supposed to do it. Similarly, he says for the education, you have to, and he says a very interesting point he has mentioned is the inspection versus accreditation. He says, why inspection? Let the accreditation to be given, and in West and other countries, it is given by the independent media houses. The top business magazines are giving for the business management or institutions, and they assess everything. While in India, you have to, there will be an inspection team will come. I don't think that Dr. Sankran has gone. I can very well say that in India, that inspection team means against the corruption. Inspection means that you have to just satisfy them physically. Physically means they should be taken care nicely. They have to be given good transport, put in a good hotel, provide good foods, etc., and good mementos and gifts, etc., and they will give you good ranking. Now, this is not acceptable. He says it should be independently. Let anyone can give the accreditation that this institution is good or not, and then the student will choose where to go. But what we are seeing is, and he has also mentioned the interference of that government things, which is not acceptable. Thank you very much, Dr. Sankaran, for giving your views very, very boldly. And I'm sure that these types of views, when it will reach to the higher ups, they will also consider, and whatsoever they feel that yes, they are practical and acceptable, they can very well, they should, and they are doing. In many cases, they have accepted many good views and good suggestions. I'm sure this will definitely take part in our next curriculum. One more point which he has mentioned is about the NP, the National Education Policy 2020, where a student has to decide about at age 18 what I have to become, musician, dancer, whatnot. And after 3-4 years, he or she decide, no, I have to become a doctor. He says those 4 years are very, very crucial. So instead of giving that choice, guide something in such a way, the mentors should guide. After all, that is a very tender age. Anyone can be lured by anything. If they see some very good dance show and somebody is getting very good name, they will say, no, we want to become dancer. If they will see that some singing show is good and somebody is, so this is the thing which is happening in India. So what Dr. Shankaran says, that mentorship is required, and let the mentors will guide, then the student can decide, not the student him or herself. Thank you very much, Dr. Sankaran. Now my question goes to you, because I know that you have to leave for an important meeting. I'm very thankful that you have given time to us.
Thanks for this.
Do you think government is not serious at all for the education? I'm not saying this government, I'm saying all the governments from the very beginning, because you see the budget, you see the tendency. Yes, they always give the committees, state the committee make a report. It takes so many years, and then the committee will submit the report, and they say, yes, this report is very good, we are going to follow everything. But when the practical things comes, then the result is the same. I will give a small example. The example is that 2020 National Education Policy was released on 30th of January 2020, 30th of July 2020. COVID was already there. First wave has already been seen. And at that time, National Education Policy clearly mentioned 6% of the GDP. And the budget which has come in 2021, it was 3.1. Why? And now they say, no, COVID was already there. So you should have not released this NEP, or you should have said this NEP recommends 6%, but it is not possible at least for 2 years or 3 years or 4 years because of COVID. So it shows the short-sightedness. They don't have the far-sightedness. They are just thinking that giving a good jumlas or showing a good, very gloomy picture, people will be happy. But the real sense, the education is suffering. So do you think the government is either not serious, or their think tank or their advisors are becoming just a yes persons to the leadership? They are not giving the correct advice to the political leadership, who is ready to take actions, proper actions, but the advisors are just for their any interest or their lack of knowledge, they are doing it. What do you say about this, Dr. Shankar?
Well, I really don't know what happens in the policy corridors, but I do know one thing. Knowledge is, if you want to be a knowledge person, you have to be happy by being alone, because you have the freedom to say what you want, so long as it doesn't hurt anybody. So as an academic, I have realized that being able to write about things, which fortunately this country allows us to do, without hurting a person or an institution, is uniquely the ability of an academic. Because you're saying, I'm part of the system and we need to improve in this. So that sense of the unitive sense is always there in the academic, according to me. Otherwise, we are just not academic enough, actually. Because the problem is, with the system that we have created. Now, I feel that especially when it comes to social science, I don't know so much about, though I'm an engineer, I don't know so much about, education in the engineering sector. We don't need much resources. Until very recently, our regulators said you can have only one shift. Now, what is this thing about this one shift, for instance? If buildings are the most important thing, why are we not allowing it to go for a second or a third shift? Because most of the capital expenditure is there, at least for management education and social sciences education. Technology, yes, requires, or medicine requires certain. But even in medicine, I know a very, I don't want to misquote him, that's why I'm not mentioning his name. A person in Bangalore, very respected person, we had invited him. He was saying that how you don't need so much of area. So there's a fixation with floor area in all these education. So what I'm saying is, even with 3.5, we can do magic. And I have noticed one thing. You go to any great institution in this country, this is indicative of that. Look at the tallest and the most important building is the administrative building. You go to the great small university I went to, Kent State University, only one building which is 12-storied. You can see it from all over the campus. The only place where there's a lift, okay, elsewhere it's in a village called Kent near Ohio. Amazing place. Now we have such amazing place, people in this country, but I think that many of them are in academia. If they are in academia, they are not in, they're teaching, doing silent work and saying that I'm not going to get in this. I'm waiting for, that time. It's like Milton saying, they also serve who only stand and wait. Wonderful statement. Because we have, infinity. I mean, that also goes against us in a way. But what I'm saying is, I think a large amount of money is spent on unnecessary things, or if it is spent, it is not utilized.
Okay.
I can have a wonderful MBA program in a dilapidated building, provided I have the energy levels are high of knowledge. Knowledge shall deliver. We have to believe that. That may not be true for others. I think about knowledge keepers, power keepers, money keepers, and service keepers. Okay. Sri Aurobindo says the same thing. I mean, great. I got the whole idea from him actually. By temperament. So those people who have the knowledge temperament can do with a shack. And I've seen this elsewhere. So I think we need to take this money thing out of that, but provide money for equipment, for quantum physics research, for nanotechnology research. We'll need money. And we need to pay our people also well. I agree. But let us not put it on dead investments like land and building. Especially since private sector has now come into this. I think we can do it with a lot. We need to readjust this and say developing knowledge is the most important thing. For that, we have to pay the right person the right amount of, not too much money also. Because as an academic, I know that I can't get what industry gives. I was in industry 3 times, but I have the freedoms. So I can put Adam Smith on one side and Karl Marx on side and read these things, So that's okay. The mix that we have.
Now,
so that's my point.
One more question before you leave is yes. That because I have, as you rightly said about the wastage of money on unnecessary things, I have seen Imperial College London, how huge library is there. Yes. And their administrative part is very small. I have seen the University of Florida, very small rooms for the administrators, but huge library and huge things, all the things for the students. Now, my question to you is, do you think the poor infrastructure, forget about the administrative building in the rural area or class tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities where they don't have proper buildings? And if we go to the villages, I'm talking of not higher education, I'm just coming towards the basic education also, primary education. They don't have in the proper rooms. In night, they are using the cow shed. Morning, they are using the classes. What quality education we will be able to provide if we don't have that infrastructure? What you say about this, Dr. Shankaran?
Yes, sir. I mean, I think government schools require infrastructure. So this money that is being spent, I think should be diverted to, creating the atmosphere for our young children. I really think so.
And but I when I
But and have 3 shifts in these institutions. Let there be facilities for travel, all that. We have to make our cities and other places safer, so that our students, including girls, can travel in the night, and let them come at 1 o'clock. Instead, we say come at 9, leave at 5. So we are basically thinking by spending their time, they will. It doesn't happen through that osmosis. It happens by a interaction with people who genuinely care for you. And there are some people, and there are lots of such people in our country who want to be genuine teachers. We are blessed with that, actually, because for us, ideas are so important. The spiritual life.
Yes, you are right that even the libraries there were working 24 hours, and the students are sitting there, peer mentorship, discussing with each other, and with all facilities there.
Absolutely.
And so one of the professor who came on my show, he says that in our India, people, the students are going more to the cafeteria than to the library. I said, but there the library itself is having cafeteria inside. All facilities are there. You can have sandwich, you can have everything. Why not in India? We should have these facilities. Then the student will spend more time there instead of going back to the hostel or to the house.
Absolutely.
And discuss. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you.
I know that you have to go, but very nice, because this quality education is such an important thing. I know that it cannot cover in one media conference. It requires so many things. Definitely, I would like to have another session when I will definitely take you again. Thank you very much, Dr. Sankan.
Thank you, sir. And my apologies to the fellow participants for having to leave I have committed my time.
Yes,
so that's why.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Now I would like to invite my next panelist guest, and he's Professor Dr. P. Subramania. Dr. Subramania is not present, but he is kind enough to get his recorded when I spoke to him earlier. So I will be playing that recording, but I would like to just introduce about him. He is the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Mangalore University. He is having more than 3 decades of experience in teaching, research, and administration. He did his MCom from Mangalore University in 1982, securing first rank with gold medal. He obtained PhD degree from Mangalore University in 1992 in the area of consumer behavior. He worked as professor, trainer, and consultant. He published 46 research papers in national and international journals of repute. He did postdoctoral research at Nottingham Business School, Nottingham Trent, University, England on HRD policies and practices. He also did a cross-national study of India and Britain under the Commonwealth Fellowship Scheme during 2001 and 2. He received an international award entitled eLearn International Award 2003 from Scotland, UK for his best research paper on trend and status of corporate e-learning and Indian experience. He also received the prestigious Devang Mehta National Award for Best Teacher in Human Resource Management in November 2009. He is down to earth, ready to listen, and eager to implement. I will be just playing his recording, which he has recorded today, and he has, so that our I think some I will take his recording afterwards. I think some technical hitch is there, so we will set right. Now I will invite my next panelist guest. He is Mr. R. Kannan. Mr. R. Kannan is the corporate advisor and keynote speaker. No, sorry, I'm applying my apologies. I think the next speaker is Dr. Priya Solomon. I would like to invite Dr. Priya Solomon. She is associate professor and in the Faculty of Management Studies at MIT University, Noida. She has more than 25 years of experience in academics and related administrative work. She completed her doctorate degree from Allahabad University. She possesses a flair and passion for working on accreditation process and has actively worked on designing of management curriculum as well as e-content development. She is involved in outcome planning and implementation process since 2014. She has publications in journals of repute, including ABDC journals, and is a reviewer of international Scopus indexed research journals. She is guiding and supervising research scholars in the field of management finance area for their PhD thesis writing and award of degree. She has been invited as keynote speakers and session chair at international conferences by management institutions of repute. She has also conducted various faculty development programs. She has patents in the field of management and finance. Welcome, Dr. Priya Solomon on our show. Dr. Priya Solomon, you have heard what the Professor Dr. Sankran has spoken, and he is very categorically saying that the freedom has not been given to the educator. Everything is controlled by the bureaucracy or the bureaucratic system, and
You're not audible, sir.
Dr. Solomon, can you hear me?
No, yes.
Okay.
No.
So Dr. Solomon, and he is very clear, and you are being associated with the accreditation system yourself. Now we would like to know your views on quality education. Dr. Priya Solomon, please.
First of all, thank you, sir, for the great opportunity to speak on such a topic like quality education, which can go into volumes and volumes of writing, and we can speak on it. Voluminous speeches can be given and debates can be held. But I will try to touch on three dimensions, which I think so are the key to this achievement of this UN Sustainable Goal, which is number 4, and which is very pertinent to the achievement of all other UN Sustainable Goals. I would like to start with the words of Swami Vivekananda ji. He said he defined education as a manifestation of the divine perfection already existing in man. That is, education only helps us to become more perfect. It brings out the potential in a human, in an individual, and it helps us to become an asset for the country, an asset for ourselves, and asset for the family in which we live and the society in which we are. So, in other words, when the UN has given us the sustainable goal, we must look at the three dimensions. There are a lot of regulations, there are a lot of guidelines being formulated by states, countries, but we must not forget in this matrix of regulations and guidelines and formulations and accreditations, the basic three dimensions. First, which dimension which I would like to stress is on the inclusiveness and equity for all in education, which means not only making the education fundamental right of all. Education for all was there, and we as Indians also in India also we have been fostering primary education as a basic human right of every child. But now the focus should be on accessibility, and more so when the COVID was, at its peak, when schools and colleges shut down, all of a sudden lockdowns were there. Colleges, universities, schools tried to shift onto the online platform. It became difficult for some families to afford even a laptop, even a mobile smartphone. So we should think of ways of creating an environment that can sustain this education, this literacy drive to make literacy available to all. So we should try to reduce this digital divide also. We are talking of the FIT approach, financing, innovation, and technology approach. So why not think of also reducing this digital divide? People found it very, very difficult to sustain their children. Some people withdrew because the income streams diminished, or people they lost their dear ones, the earning members in the families. And the children in the family could not afford to go to schools. So that is the sadness of things, that we are talking of sustainable goals at national level, at the global level, but let us go down to the grassroots level. Let us talk of cultivating an environment that sustains that literacy drive, that drive to educate each and every child, each and every person who has the potential to learn and become an asset, a resource for the country. Next dimension which I would like to stress on, which we are, forgetting in this vast maze of, our steps taken in, hurry scurry to, just get to figures, get to statistics, achieve certain targets, is that education has to be outcome oriented. When I talk of outcome-oriented education. I'm talking of choice-based education. Education which achieves its outcome in terms of the learning objectives, which are smart, which are measurable, which are achievable, which can be seen by the attainment levels of the child, not the attainment levels of the teacher. How many schools have how many children? How many are retained? What is the qualification of the faculty does matter, but it is a child-centric. It is a scholar-centric. What does he achieve at the end? Does he have the skill set? Has the mindset been changed? Not only to become employed, but also to become an entrepreneur? Has the employability increase of that student, be it at any level, be it any level? It could be technical education, it could be vocational education, it could be university education. So when we talk of inclusiveness, we talk right from the child education, from the pre-primary stage. But as we go up, we should focus more and more outcome. Multidisciplinary. My first panelist on the show said that if the student has an inclination for other disciplines, he may be an engineering student, give him the freedom. Let him pursue that also. So in case if he doesn't feel so to pursue his engineering education, or he has some fallouts at higher levels, he can lean back on something which he has pursued, maybe as a hobby course, maybe as a vocational course. So that is very important. So we are thinking of now, India should think of doing also funding on that line. Because education, of course, is important, but the resources are also important. Some private institutions have their own resources, but what about the public sector institutions, which are government schools, which are funded by the government? Now the government should see that all funding is outcome based, not input requirement. How many tables, how many chairs, how many blackboards, how many smart boards I require? That requirement I send and the government sends me the funding. That should not be the criteria. Certain performance metrics must be submitted, as the government has already started, in the right direction. And every institution at every level should be brought into the compass of that radar of inspection and audit, not only internally but also externally, so that the outcome-based funding is actually resulting in real building up of the nation through the building up of the human resource at every level. The government already has taken some steps. We are having new IIT set up, new IIMs set up. The enrollment will increase accessibility of this type of education, which was, the exclusive right of some few, is now getting open to a larger chunk of scholars who can compete and who have the potential in them. But they do not have the resource to get into these. So they should be funded. Scholarships should be provided on merit. Economically weaker sections, we are enrolling them in schools. Why not? Go up with that at each level, vocational, professional level. Practice from grassroots level, start the experiment from grassroots level. But now is the time. We should now quicken our pace and take that step at higher levels. Third dimension is lifelong opportunities for all. What is this education meant for? Not for testing purposes. We are not teaching our students, doing adult education for testing purposes. We are trying to inculcate human values. We are trying to make the individuals global citizens. We are giving them opportunities of skilling, reskilling. Government has rightly thought of MOOCs, Swayam, Swayam Prabha, radio community shows where open accessibility is given to all 24/7. Digital library platforms have been opened, but as I said, that divide is still there. That has to be, reduced by making those digital resources also available to all. Remote accessibility should be allowed. It is not only distribution of laptops, smartphones that will help. It is also the mindset. People do not have the security. If you ask a person in the rural or in tier 3 city, they fear that giving a phone to a child or a student, he may get into some cyber crime, right? So they do not want him to use smartphones. That insecurity is still there. So privacy, security also becomes an issue when we are talking of the environment in which digital resources can be, made open and accessible for all, and for all means at all ages, and even those who have never used a smartphone before, right? So I'm talking of now what needs to be done is we must have an application oriented learning. We must include in our curriculum happiness, mindfulness, design thinking. It is not just becoming, ICT friendly. It is also taking one step ahead and redesigning our whole curriculum in order to make our individuals, our students, our adults better citizens, and not only better citizens for India, but better ambassadors for the Indian subcontinent, and also help them to learn and respect their own culture, respect gender, gender diversity, and also help them to become entrepreneurs and just not look for employment. They should think of opening their own ventures if the capability is there. Government is there to support them, but they do not have access to it because of lack of information or misinformation. So that is another thing. When I'm talking of making education inclusive, that means inclusive in terms of not only the bookish knowledge, but of all kinds of information which can make them better global citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Priya Solomon, for giving your very, very elaborate and informative views. I'm sure all our viewers are getting very much enlightened today about the quality education. Paucity of time, so I will not like to summarize, but she has given all the views very, very clearly, and so that one can understand what things to be done by the private organizations, by the government, and by the educators, so that the quality education can be imparted. Thank you very much, Dr. Priya Solomon, for giving your views. Now I would like to play the message of what he has sent to us. I will just see if it will work now. It should work.
Quality in education. So word quality is made up of 7 letters of English alphabet. So English word quality. Education is made up of 9 letters of English alphabet. So English word education. This 7-letter word quality is being used, overused, misused, and abused all these days. Quality, according to me, it means free from defects or zero error performance. It depends upon our attitude towards continuous learning, improvement, and development based on the philosophy of plan, do, check, action. According to Kolb's learning cycle, concrete experience must be converted into our reflective observation, in turn abstract conceptualization, then active experimentation with our new ideas, and again we will get the next cycle of concrete experience. As far as education is concerned, we have got pre-primary education, primary education, secondary or high school education, then college education, post-graduation and beyond. But it is easier said than done. Sometimes it turns out to be a rhetoric rather than reality, quality education. Because we have got general education, technical education, engineering education, medical education, dental education, veterinary education, or agricultural education, education in law, adult education, business education, education in fine arts, visual arts, paramedical, and so on and so forth. There are many daunting questions which are left unanswered till date. Normally, we feel that well-defined problem is half solved. But the question is, have we identified and defined the problem in clear-cut terms? Because clarity of thought and purity in our heart, which will determine whether we are in a position to define quality in education or not. Normally, I feel that never treat the symptom but the disease. So it should not be symptomatic, because if you give any solution to a symptomatic problem, then a problem will generate a solution. In turn, that solution must have generated a new problem. So it is a kind of problem, solution, problem, vicious cycle all these days as far as quality education is concerned in our country. Ultimately, we should never put the cart before the horse. When we think about policy postulates, for example, National Education Policy of 1968, later on 1986, and some tweaking was done in 1992. All these attempts could not deliver goods due to a variety of reasons. After 34 years, we got what we call National Education Policy 2020, which contains brilliant promises and daring proposals. But when we study the past, understand the present, and try to project the future, we will feel that two issues are very, very prominent as far as quality education is concerned. One is mindset is the challenge, and problem two is implementation is the key. With the same key, we can lock and unlock. So it means we need to have a pragmatic approach based on ideological underpinnings and a holistic context. People say we need smart education. S-M-A-R-T. S means specific, M means measurable, A means achievable, R means relevant, T means timely. So it means education with the passing times, with the changing times, we must be able to bring about transformative changes in the entire landscape of education, starting from pre-primary to higher education. And we also think in terms of education for life, because we have to embrace lifelong learning, and education must be outcome-based education. So it means in this context, I come across 7 pillars. First one is access. It means connect the disconnected. And we have to increase gross enrollment ratio. Gross enrollment ratio is measured in terms of enrollment divided by 18 to 23 population multiplied by 100. But as far as this 18 to 23 population segment is concerned, it is gross and not net. Because how many of them are eligible to be enrolled to the higher education? It means graduation and beyond. Therefore, I will always prefer to adopt what we call eligible enrollment ratio. It means enrollment divided by 1823 population who are eligible to enroll themselves, because they must have completed by then what we call +2. Otherwise, they will not be eligible. Therefore, eligible enrollment ratio is preferable to gross enrollment ratio. According to NEP 2020, we must be able to attain 50% of gross enrollment ratio in the higher education segment by 2035. Then the second pillar is equity. There are two kinds of institutions today: institutions of quality and institutions of equity. For example, we have got central and state universities, institutions of eminence, where you can find what you call institutions of quality. Then private universities, deemed to be universities. When you come across colleges or the college segment, we have got government colleges, private gated colleges, private unaided colleges, and we have got constituent college of the university, then we got autonomous colleges. Again, location-wise, we have got rural colleges, semi-urban colleges, and urban-centric colleges. And again, as far as accreditation is concerned, a few of them are accredited, while many of them are not yet accredited. Therefore, National Assessment Accreditation Council is encouraging these institutions to come forward for NAC assessment so that quality in education can be enforced. So it means quality, according to me, the third pillar, it means excellence, not perfection. 70% perfection is enough, never fail to act. The fourth one is affordability. Affordability in education means pricing aspect of higher education in India. It means the fee structure, then the fee concessions for particularly socio-economically disadvantaged group, and staggered payments of the fee, then encouragement through scholarships and education loans. Fifth pillar is autonomy. It means freedom to take decisions. Light but tight regulation is the need of the hour. The sixth pillar is transparency. It means public disclosure of all our activities in the higher education segment. It means no hide and seek business. So it means commercialization of higher education must be countered at any cost so that education will be made available to everyone. As Swami Vivekananda rightly said, if poor cannot go to the education, education must go to the poor. Therefore, transparency in our dealings will assume a lot of significance. The last or the seventh pillar in promoting quality education is accountability. Accountability is nothing but answerability. Buck will stop at that place. No mutual blame game. Therefore, accountability must be honored at a higher price. Quality education is definitely what we say, it is politically wanted, economically useful, socially relevant, and morally defensible. There are several elements as far as promoting quality in education is concerned. That is curriculum framework, pedagogical innovations, formative assessment rather than summative assessment, teacher competencies, enabling infrastructure, it means physical, then financial, human capital, digital, and so on and so forth. So enabling infrastructure, then vision, mission, values, strategies, and budget framework. Then finally, the seventh element is the responsive governance. You have to think it over, 10 points, because today, all these years, we focused on education and employment, and employability was put to the back burner. Now, NEP 2020 gives major emphasis to what you call employability. Make our candidates more employable than ever before. Try to enhance their employability quotient. They are qualified, it is not enough. They must also be competent. It means domain-specific application-oriented knowledge, then positive mental attitude, relevant and requisite skill mix, then positive and result-oriented habits, then finally, morally defensible values. There must be industry-academia collaboration. Internationalization of higher education must be encouraged at any cost. The student choice, flexibility, the student learning experiences, and student feedback must be given a lot of importance. Then we must be able to identify and define graduate attributes and attainment of these attributes and graduate profile. This is what is required in quality education. Thank you very much for the time and opportunity.
So we have heard what the Honorable Vice Chancellor has mentioned, and one point which he has emphasized is the employability is more important than the employment, which Dr. Priya Solomon was also emphasizing, that employability is required, and that is where the quality education plays a very, very important role. Thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chancellor. Now, I would like to invite my next panelist guest, and he is Mr. R. Khannan. Mr. Khannan is the corporate advisor and keynote speaker. He is ex-TCS, ICICI Bank, and Hinduja Group. Mr. R. Khannan is an expert in finance and strategy with more than 35 years experience, and during his career as a management consultant and as a key member of corporate headquarters in various corporate, including TCS and PwC as management consultant, Hinduja Group as VP and head of the strategy, ICICI Infotech as EVP, and head of strategy, ICICI Bank Group as EVP strategy. He carried out assignments relating to corporate finance, fundraising, treasury management, strategy formulation and implementation, organization restructuring, corporate performance management, business development, and mergers and acquisitions. He is member of expert committee in FICCI, CII, Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Indian Merchants Chamber on committees relating to private equity, industry, economy, banking, transportation, and environment. He is the member of National Task Force on Artificial Intelligence of CII. He had attended programs organized by World Bank, International Institute of Finance, Asian Development Bank, AIIB on international finance. He has spoken in seminars on union budget, Indian economy, banking and management at annual CFO and management conferences. As a speaker in various forums, he was in the jury of selecting best CFOs in India. He was a member on the board of studies of SIES School of Management for 5 years, and presently the member of Academic Advisory Council in Birla Institute of Management Technology, Greater Noida, and Voxen School of Management, Hyderabad. He was the president of 75-year-old Bombay Tamil Sangam for 3 years. He is a visiting faculty in leading management institutes on finance, strategy, organization, restructuring, and turnaround management. He has a personal interest in global and Indian economy and shared his ideas on economic development and economic crisis with the government stakeholders from across the world, and some of the recommendations on crisis resolution and economic development were implemented by the government authorities across the world and Indian government. He has received several awards from different organizations. Welcome, Mr. R. Khannan on our show. Mr. Khannan, you have heard what Honorable Vice Chancellor has spoken, what Professor Dr. Shankran has spoken, and what Dr. Priya Solomon has spoken. They all have given their views. We would like to know your views on quality education. Mr. R. Khannan, please.
Thank you, Shri Goel. As usual, you gave a very elaborate research-oriented introductory speech, and followed by excellent speeches by the other three panelists. Coming to this quality of education, in your speech, you mentioned that our rank was some 120. I can tell you with this rank of 120, the amount of CEOs we produce in US, or the amount of CEOs we have produced not only in US, across the world, or scientists across the world. Or if you, I was told for some statistics where if you go to NASA, maybe 30-35% of people working there are scientists from India. Similarly, if you look at the Bangalore, it has got a lot of multinational company-oriented research and development centers. Bangalore has emerged as a R&D center of the world. I'm sure we have potential as in India. Today, we are the automobile capital of the world. We are the IT capital of the world. We are pharma capital of the world. We can become the education capital of the world. The reason is that, as we are all aware, still most of our countries are in developing stages, including Africa. And we know many of the students from Africa and countries like Afghanistan, Bhutan. In fact, I think the Bhutan ruler came and studied in India. So we have an excellent education system. I'm not talking about the entire system. With this 120th rank, we are able to produce a lot of good quality people in various fields around the world. That's my first observation. Second is that when you talk about quality education, you go and speak to any parent, the poorest of the poorest in India, the richest of the richest in India. You ask them what is their main aspiration, they will say that I want my child to get the best education possible. So every parent's objective is to get his child to be educated in the best possible way. So that is one of the objectives every family they have. So that is why you must have read, maybe you are motivated to choose this topic after reading the survey of the All India Education Survey, which comes out every year, where they talk about quality of education. If you see, there is a lot of inequality in terms of urban, semi-urban, and rural, then rich and poor. Then you go to public institutions and private institutions and coaching classes. So like that, there is a big divide which is there in India as of today. I agree. But it was mentioned in the policy, you raised a question. Government set a target of 6% of GDP as the central contribution towards education. Why this has not happened in this year? You only had that answer with the pandemic. But I'm sure when they set the target of 6%, it was not an immediate target. Maybe they had a 5-year, I'm not sure. Maybe they had 5 years in mind by which it will reach 6%. So as I said, we can emerge as an education capital of the world thanks to the pandemic. You must be, and of course, you will say that not many people had a smartphone. Even those who had smartphones, not every child had access. All that is there as of today. But now, one good news is that government has decided to revive a company like BSNL and MTNL. And BSNL has got a project called BharatNet. I think it is already, I think it has penetrated in more than 100,000 villages or 200,000 villages today. So their objective is to take this BharatNet to almost all villages in India. That is the objective. So when you talk about quality, what happens is that the teaching, it has to start from the primary level. From primary level itself, that is why the government also now, I was reading 3 days ago, Madhya Pradesh has decided to start at the government level, even pre-primary. And similarly, Madhya Pradesh government has decided to convert to 172 Hindi medium schools and English medium schools. This is not only happening in Madhya Pradesh. I think I was reading somewhere, I think it is happening in Mumbai also. Mumbai Municipal Corporation has converted many of the corporation schools into English medium schools. They upgraded. And one good thing is that as a part of CSR, the companies talk about CSR. So as a part of CSR, companies focus on 4 areas. One of the important areas, companies focus on education. Then they talk about water. Then they talk about poverty alleviation. So education finds a lot of importance among the companies in terms of their CSR activities. I know many companies, not only in Mumbai, but even in rural areas of Maharashtra, they adopted schools and they are giving instruments like screens and as well as the digital content for classes. So while talking about this quality of education, let us come to a role of various parties. As I already said, even a poor man, I know families where they spend more than 50% of the income on children's education. I know many senior people in Mumbai who are vice presidents and above, their fathers were taxi drivers, they were grocers. So these people, they have come up because their parents put a lot of money there. And of course, the survey says, the survey found that many of these people who are studying in government schools, they went to have a coaching in a coaching institutes. So the number is increasing, indicating that the quality of government schools are poor. I will come to that, how to correct that. So the role of government now, as we emphasize on quality of inputs, quality of content, one of the areas which government has to focus is training the teachers. It's very, very important. And especially after this COVID, we are moving towards a concept of hybrid model, whereby we are going to give education through TV as well as teachers are going to speak. In fact, if you ask me, if the BharatNet project comes up, then the role of a teacher in a rural area should be to put that video, and only when students ask questions, they should answer. So that type of system we have to move towards. And before that, of course, these teachers have to be trained well. I'm not only talking about teachers in rural areas, in schools, even teachers in colleges, they require training. They require continuous training. The concept is there in corporate sector where every employee, whether he is a lowest ranked employee or even if he is a CEO, even a CEO requires a training today in the context of digitalization. So like that, what should happen is that every year there should be a mandate that every teacher in a college, they should go for mandatorily 5 days external training. Now you call it faculty development program. UGC conducts this program. I was a speaker in some of these UGC programs for professors where they came from various states. I was a speaker, I was speaking to them, but this was selected people. But according to me, it should happen to all the teachers, not only just a select few. Where they select some few and they send them for training. It should not be the way. Well, the methodology is changing, new concepts are emerging in education. So even teachers require some kind of training. In fact, this being a teaching profession, according to me, they require at least 10 days of training every year on the new concepts. It should be mandatory. That's the other one. Then coming to students, of course, I like the way Professor Shankaran talked about how students are bright. That is true. So if they are guided properly, actually they will adopt best practices. And once they go out, I can tell you the role of alumni. Yeah, both Sri Goel as well as Dr. Shankaran were talking about colleges abroad. You will find most of these colleges, they get funding from alumni. Those who have gone out. I know Mr. Shivanadar, who is the chairman of HCL Technologies. He studied in a municipal school in Madurai, and I think he has spent more than 7-8 crores to upgrade that school. We are not only talking about IIMs. So people even should start looking at the colleges they have studied, and they should start looking at the schools they have studied. So there should be some kind of the alumni engagement concept has to come not only at IIMs, not only at management colleges, it should come to even colleges as well as schools. But if you see, I think Mr. Sundar Pichai and all must have studied in a school which may not have been even a convent in Chennai. So these type of people, so the school should know that people are there and they can approach, they can go and upgrade. So this is other way we can go and upgrade. In fact, most of the people who are doing well in India today, they are all from village, including a person like me. I'm from a village. So they are all from villages. If you only know that school knows that these people are doing so well in this area, and obviously they will not mind spending few thousand rupees or a lakh of rupee to support the school. So that is the other thing which has to come. And of course, in this new education policy, a lot of new concepts are being talked about. One good thing is that when colleges are being created, people are able to spend money on creating the physical infrastructure. But again, these colleges, when they're being set up, these people require training. Not every college, if you grade, we are talking about grading system and all, if you can have 5-6 grades of colleges, where the top level, there are colleges you can say the worst. So when you create such an institution, even there should be some mentoring. I would suggest that this has to come from UGC. UGC should have some mentoring program for those who are starting a college on best practices. And it is being told in the national education policy that they have to prepare a plan, 5-year plan. They have to show all this. So this will not come automatically. This may be true for management college, but not everybody starts a management college. People start arts colleges, people start science colleges. So according to me, the mentoring has to be given, even the people who are going to start a college. So these are all the things which we have to take segment by segment and say that if you do this, I'm sure India will be the education leader in the world in the next 10 years.
Okay,
Thank
India will be education leader in the world in next 10 years, say Mr. Kannan. And Mr. Kannan has raised 2 points. I just want to highlight two. One, he says the CEOs are everywhere in the world. Everybody used to quote like this. But I think we should understand one thing, how we are 140 crore people. How many CEOs are there? Number one. Number two, they have been trained. Even in India, I have seen after passing an engineering college, the companies like Infosys, they give the extensive training and then only they are fit to work. But as far as abroad also, and how many Nobel laureates we have, I think the reply will be almost nil, because there is what we are imparting the education is not that quality education that we will win the Nobel's prizes for the country. Number two is mentioned about the automobile capital. Yes, but recently one very big company left the country, which Mr. Kannan might be knowing. So it shows that we have to be automobile capital. For that, whatsoever the ease of business has to be given further, has to be given. But he has made a very good point. He says that whatsoever, if we will impart the proper knowledge, the training to the teachers, then the quality education can come. Thank you very much, Mr. Kannan, paucity of time. So my questions goes to Dr. Priya Solomon. I expect only not more than 1 minute reply. There is a very big divide between urban and rural. And until this divide is not covered, although now BharatNet is trying and everything, but everybody knows there is no electricity. What BharatNet will do? You see the real condition of the villages, and then how we can impart the quality education to those students who are from the rural background or in the rural area. What do you say about that, Dr. Priya Solomon?
I was also, one day wondering about it, and, one possible solution came to me, that why don't we use smart, solar cookers and all that? Why not have smart molds which are energized by solar energy? So something like that. Or some sort of phones which are energized by solar energy or wind energy. And such an innovation can help us to, penetrate even those remote tribal areas, where it is very, very, difficult to get, digitally, connect to those children or to those adults. So that could be one way out, which I think.
Okay.
Think of some alternative way of energizing using instead of electricity, connecting to them.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Priya Solomon. Now my question goes to Mr. Kannan. You have mentioned about Madhya Pradesh, you have mentioned about Mumbai. You have forgotten Delhi. Delhi government schools have become model. I was told that now there is a queue for Delhi government admission schools than the private schools. It means same educator, same students, everyone is same, only the willpower or the political will of the leadership of Mr. Kejriwal. So it means there is a lack of the government will to teach, impart a good quality education. What do you say about this, Mr. Kannan?
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, Mr. Kejriwal comes on TV every day. So that is a very good model. But one more thing you mentioned, the skill development, the approach, the vocational training. We have a skill development mission. West Germany is the model for the vocational training in the world. They have the maximum number of institutes for the population they have. So that is one area where I think we have a skill development mission in India, which is working towards that. And you also mentioned about IT sector. In fact, why India became so popular in the world is due to IT sector. And like Sri Goel mentioned, everyone who enters a company, whether he is a trainee or a CEO, they require training in that company. So they are given training for, in fact, when I joined TCS, even though I was not in software development, I was asked to do software development for 3 months.
Okay.
So that is how we created the talent pool. So the role of corporations is very great. In fact, there is a program by CAA and FICCI where these corporates are tying up with some 11,000 ITIs in India,
why they are tying up with IIT IIMs? Why not they are tying up with the rural schools? That is the biggest problem in India. All the corporates wants to go for the cream of the schools. They are already self-sufficient about themselves. They should go to the rural area.
I'm not
where the
talking about
problem-
IITs.
where-
I'm talking about ITAs which are based in rural area. And on your question
okay,
on your question on rural penetration,
okay.
one good thing is that the roads are being laid to all these villages. So even there is no school in a village, so it will be easy for children to move to other villages.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Kannan, for giving views. So viewers, you have seen the quality education is required. Although the ranking is 120, although we know that we have produced so many big names in the corporate world, but still we have to accept that there is a lots of divide between urban and rural, haves and have nots. Until unless the divide will not go, until unless we will not set up a complete overall, although the national education policy is there to change, but how it will be implemented, how it is going to be implemented is a very big question. If it will be implemented properly, might be that we will see that Indian ranking will go up and we will get the quality education. Otherwise, we have to do something. We will not be getting the quality education which actually we deserve. Thank you very much. And today's program has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, News Gaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, Bharat Post News, Karu News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor to bring to you everyday new topic in our media conference with Lal Goel at 10:30 a.m. Tomorrow, the topic is India 5 trillion economy by 2024. And our panelists are Mr. Ramnath Pradeep, he is the former chairman and managing director, Corporation Bank Mumbai. Dr. M. Narendra is the former chairman and managing director of Indian Overseas Bank Mumbai. And Ms. Vinita Hariharan is the national level public policy expert. She is the chief of program, Ministry of MSME, Government of India. So please tune in tomorrow for media conference with Lal Goel at 10:30 a.m. Thank you very much, Dr. Priya Solomon. Thank you very much, Mr. R. Kannan. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Shankaran, as well as thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Mangalore University. Thank you all the viewers for watching. And I am sure that all viewers must take a decision themselves that they must send their children for quality education. Try to educate yourself also, inculcate good values, moral values, then the children can go for a quality education themselves. And then, as Mr. Kannan mentioned, then India will be the real, going to be the guru, Vishwa Guru in education.